Hi, folks. This is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report. You know, as winter approaches and we're all getting ready for ice fishing, there's not a lot of people that are doing any kind of open water fishing right now. It's that transition stage. We're all waiting for first ice. But as we do that, I've been thinking about something I talk very little about, and that's the trout that are in so many of the waters not far from us. Salmon River, the St. Regis River, the Chateauguay River. There's a number of really good trout streams, and that's just the big ones. But I think there's something so basic about trout fishing in our area that I want to talk about over the next few weeks and months until trout season begins. One of them is, did you know that there are very few species that were actually native to this area? In fact, when we talk about all the trout that we go after, only one trout is native to this area, and that's the brook trout. And they aren't even a trout, they're a char. But let's get back to something else. When we think about trout fishing, there's really three kinds of, or designations of trout that can live in our waters. One is stock trout. Those are the trout that are raised in hatcheries, and they're brought in a truck, and the truck pulls up to one of our streams, and they dump some of their trout in the stream. These are stock trout. These are as unwary, as unknowing as anything can be. They're dumped in a new area. They've been fed by hand before, people giving them pellets, and now they've got to live and survive. Then the other kind of trout that could be in a water and that we have in our waters are native trout. And I just mentioned that because there's only one kind of trout that are native trout, and that is the brook trout. However, there also can be trout that have been born in the stream, and these trout are not native. These are wild trout. There's a difference. So you got three kinds of trout. You got wild trout. They could be browns or rainbows that were brought here from other parts of the world. Brown trout from Germany and places in Europe, and rainbow trout from all different parts, but they weren't native to this area. But it's been decades and decades, and so some of those trout reproduced over that period of time, and now there are actually wild trout of these different species that are born in our waters. And the wild trout of all are the ones that can be the most wary. They are wild beings that have to use all their wits to survive. Native trout are becoming like wild trout because they have been here, and their flesh is different, everything's different than stock trout. So when we go fishing, the type of trout that we go after can make a big difference as to how we do that. You know, stock trout are initially the easiest to catch. They're new to the game. They'll strike, they'll bite almost anything because they associate it with food. They're not wary. We might stand along the bank and they see us and they think, oh, there's somebody that works for the hatchery that's here to feed us, until a big hook gets in their mouth, and then their whole world changes. But I think it's interesting to be aware of all that. We have a couple of streams here, and I think the Salmon River that runs through Malone is probably our premier stream that has all three versions of fish in it. And it does because the conditions of that stream are better for trout survival than almost any others. And we'll talk more about that in other fishing reports. Until next time, folks, this is Don Meisner with the North Country Fishing Report.